The door you stopped believing in just opened, and part of you already knows it. If you found this tonight, stay. Don't scroll past it. Not because something dramatic is about to be revealed, but because something quiet is already moving inside you, and it deserves a few minutes of your undivided attention. Let the noise of everything else settle to the edges of the room. Something has shifted in the atmosphere of your life. Not loudly, it never announces itself loudly, the thing you've been waiting for. It moves more like a change in temperature, subtle enough that you question whether you felt it at all, persistent enough that your body registered it before your mind caught up, a warmth without a visible source, a stillness that feels different from emptiness, a sense fragile and new and almost too tender to examine directly that something is beginning. And beginnings, real ones, rarely feel the way we imagined they would. They arrive quieter than the stories we told ourselves about them, less cinematic, more internal, more like a door opening in a dimly lit hallway than a sunrise flooding an open field. You might almost walk past it without noticing, except that something in you, some deeper instrument of navigation that has been quietly recalibrating in the silence, turns toward it anyway. Let me tell you what love, the kind you actually wanted, not the kind you settled for, feels like in its earliest hours. It doesn't feel like certainty. That's the first thing most people get wrong about it. It doesn't arrive with a guarantee attached, or a clear sense of destination, or the comfortable solidity of something already proven. It arrives more like a question you find yourself wanting to sit with rather than answer quickly, a curiosity that doesn't exhaust you the way other curiosities have. A presence not heavy, not demanding, that simply makes the room feel different when it occupies it. And it's possible that you've been in the proximity of something like that recently. Something that doesn't chase, doesn't perform, doesn't arrive with the familiar static of things that were wrong from the beginning but took too long to name. Something quieter, something that sits beside the ordinary moments of your life without needing to transform them into something extraordinary, and somehow, in that very ordinariness, transforms them anyway. This reflection invites you to consider, what does it bring up in you, in the most honest and unguarded part of yourself, to sit with the possibility that what is approaching may actually be the real thing, not a rehearsal, not a consolation, but the actual love you stopped letting yourself want? Because that question, that specific, tender, almost dangerous question, may be one you've been avoiding. Not out of cowardice, but out of a very intelligent self protection developed over time in the aftermath of things that looked like love from the outside, but felt like something considerably less on the inside. The architecture of disappointment has a way of becoming the architecture of expectation. And somewhere along the way, it's possible you quietly lowered the ceiling of what you allowed yourself to hope for, told yourself you were being realistic, and filed the original version of what you wanted under the category of things that happen to other people. Picture a room that has been kept dark for a long time, not because darkness was chosen, but because the act of turning on the light required a vulnerability that felt, after a certain number of painful mornings, simply too expensive. And so the room stayed dim, and the person inside it learned to navigate by the faint light available, learned to call it enough, learned to stop remembering on most days what full illumination felt like. Something may be reaching for the switch right now, not violently, not with the disorienting brightness of something that demands immediate adjustment, but with a gentle, almost tentative quality like the first gray light before dawn that arrives so gradually you're not sure for a long moment whether it's actually getting lighter or whether you're simply imagining it because you've been in the dark long enough to start seeing things. This reflection invites you to consider, where in your body do you feel the difference between the love that was almost right and the love that actually fits? And what does that felt sense tell you about what you've been quietly waiting for? Some of you watching this have been carrying a very specific image, not a person, not a face, but a feeling. The feeling of being known without having to explain yourself, of being chosen without having to perform the choosing, of existing in someone's presence and feeling for the first time in a long time that the fullness of who you are is not too much, that it is, in fact, exactly what is wanted. That image has stayed with you through every wrong turn, through every connection that came close but didn't quite arrive. It has been your internal compass, even when you've stopped trusting it, even when you told it to be quiet, even when you convinced yourself during the harder seasons that it was asking for something that simply didn't exist. It exists. And the reason I want you to hear that, not as a promise, because promises are not what this is, but as a possibility worth remaining open to, is this. The love you wanted has a specific quality to it that the love you settled for never had. It doesn't create anxiety as its primary texture. It doesn't leave you parsing conversations for hidden meanings or monitoring the temperature of someone's attention to determine your own worth. It doesn't ask you to compress yourself into something more manageable or expand your tolerance for things that were always quietly unacceptable. It feels instead like something settling, like a sound you didn't realize was constantly present, suddenly stopping, and in the silence that follows, recognizing that the sound was tension. And the silence is what peace actually feels like in a body that had forgotten. This reflection invites you to consider, is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than what specific things would need to be present, not grand gestures, but small, consistent, unremarkable things for you to feel genuinely safe enough to be fully yourself inside a new connection. Because safety is the foundation. Not excitement, though excitement may be present, not chemistry, though chemistry may be undeniable. Safety. The particular safety of knowing that your presence is welcome in its entirety, that your complexity is not a problem to be solved, that the version of you that surfaces at 2 in the morning when the performance of the day has been set down is not a liability, but simply you, and that you is wanted. Some of you have never had that. Some of you have had glimpses of it enough to know what it feels like, not enough to have trusted it fully before it was gone. And the memory of those glimpses has been both a gift and a quiet ache, a reminder of what is possible, an amplifier of everything that has fallen short of it. Let me say something carefully, because I think it needs to be said. The love you wanted is not something that requires you to be finished in order to receive it. It is not waiting for the healed version, the resolved version, the version of you that has worked through every layer of every wound and arrived at the connection already whole. The love that is worth having meets you in the middle of your becoming. It doesn't need you to be complete. It simply needs you to be present genuinely, honestly, without the armor that has been so useful for so long, but maybe the very thing that keeps the right connection from being able to fully reach you. This reflection invites you to consider, what would it require of you in the most practical and immediate sense to lower the armor just enough to let something real get close without abandoning the discernment that protects you from what isn't? Because discernment and openness are not opposites, they are partners. And the version of you that is moving toward what may be the love you actually wanted needs both. Needs the openness that allows genuine connection to form, and needs the discernment that recognizes in the texture of small moments whether what is forming deserves the ground it's being given. Some people watching this are standing at a threshold they've been afraid to name. Not because they don't feel it, they feel it clearly in the specific way the body knows things before the mind has finished building its arguments. But naming it makes it real, and real things can be lost in ways that imagined things cannot. And so the threshold remains unnamed, approached, and retreated from, in the particular dance of someone who wants something so much that wanting it has become its own kind of danger. You are allowed to want this completely without the familiar asterisks of self protection that have been attached to wanting for so long you've stopped noticing they're there. You are allowed to move toward what is beginning without waiting for a guarantee that the beginning will become what you hope it might. The guarantee was never part of the arrangement. Presence is, attention is. The willingness to let something real take shape in real time without controlling the outcome that is. This reflection invites you to consider, if you release the need to know how this ends before it has fully begun, what would become available to you in the experience of what is actually here right now, in this early and tender and genuinely significant moment? The power is yours. It always has been. Not the power to manufacture love or force a connection into being something it isn't, but the power to remain open to what is already moving, to notice it, to name it quietly to yourself, to let it be what it is without immediately needing to categorize or control or protect yourself from it before it has had the chance to show you what it's made of. You're about to start a relationship, and this is the love you wanted, not eventually. Now, in the specific texture of what is already present, in the quality of attention you've been receiving, in the way something about this feels different from the things that came before it, in the particular stillness of a person who has been in the dark long enough to recognize, without drama and without certainty, that the light coming through is real. Trust yourself with this, the version of you that knows the difference between what almost fits and what actually does. That version has been right before. Let it be right now. Before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. What does the love you actually wanted feel like, not look like, but feel like in the most specific and honest terms you can find for it? And what is the one thing you would need to feel in the earliest days of something new to trust that this time is genuinely different? Drop it below. I read every single one, and I mean that with everything I have. See you in the next one. And listen, the love that fits doesn't ask you to be less. It simply asks you to be present. Take care.